Hey, boys and girls, how we doing out there? Doc Severson here with Ready Set Crypto. I've got Mav out there on the West Coast.
Hello, hello.
How's everybody doing today? Welcome aboard to our Ready Set Live. Today is Wednesday, what is this, the 4th of December. I am coming to you live from Greenville, South Carolina. Mav is from Los Angeles. Love to know where you guys are coming in from today as we kind of warm up the pipes here and get people on board, and we'll get kicked off in a minute. A lot of volatility going on today. Lots of volatility. This morning we had a move that was good for about, man, it was good for about 500 points to the upside on BTC USD. And it consolidated that and then gave it all back again in the last few minutes. So this has been an exciting day. All right, so we got Rob coming in from Ferrum, UK. We have Eduardo from Dallas, Texas. We have, where's everybody else coming in from? Ellie is coming in from Florida. Hello, Ellie. We have W from the Netherlands. We have Mr. Listens coming from Belgium. Philly is checking in. I just saw the movie Invincible. Ah, talk about a Philly reference. We have Lee coming in from Ontario. Hello, Lee. And let's see, where Ricky is from the Wet Coast, Vancouver. Ian is coming in from DC. We have Tampa, Florida. And we have Organic FUD is with us here, and he's wet. And we have Quantum Crypto is coming in from Long Beach. We got Mr. Ether from Ohio. Man, we got a ton of people here today. So hello, welcome aboard. Mav he's warming up the PowerPoint right now. Things are going to happen.
Do
Things
you
are going
want
to
to
happen today.
dig into the charts first? I feel like that's
Shall we? Shall we?
whet people's appetite.
Shall we dig into the charts? We shall. We shall. All right. So Mav, say goodbye. All right. Let's see. This is a 12-minute chart of BTC USD, and you can see this morning. And honestly, guys, I don't know why this thing moved like it does. Obviously, there's some pretty good volume in there today. There's probably all kinds of reasons why it moved. Everybody's digging around for why it moved. Who cares? It moved. That's all I care about. So it went up and it went down. And if this is all you look at, you probably are missing the context of the move. Let me start from the outside in. If I go out to the monthly chart and stick a log chart on here, this is what I care about the most right now. And this is a primary uptrend on the log chart. This is what we're maintaining. If this uptrend decides to die, there's a couple of ways that we would see it. First is the trend line would lose. The price would undercut the trend line. And that's going to happen somewhere just north of 6,000. So that 6,500 level is awfully important right now. And then we can go all the way down to about 3,200 before we lose the actual trend on the monthly chart. So those are things I'm looking for. What I see from this is an awful lot similar to what we went through here. Markets it's never going to be the same. You're never going to have lightning strike in the same place in exactly the same manner like that. But this is what I care about from the top down. Now, if I go out to the weekly linear charts, the weekly linear chart is showing a primary downtrend. And so that's not particularly good, or let's just not quantify, or let's not put any judgment on it. Let's just say that this is inconvenient if mostly what you're playing is bullish strategies. So we have a lower low, lower high setting up on the weekly chart. This could just be a larger flag pattern, but it's going on an awful long time. And so the good news here is that it's not just completely shredding. So there's a big difference between the price action that we're experiencing here versus the absolute total dump that we saw, the 80% dump that we saw over here, which was, man, is that really coming up on 2 years ago now? So this is, so we're also kind of undercutting the 61.8% retracement. This is right around the level that we're having difficulty with. So there's a lot of short-term, intermediate, I would say, kind of choppy bearishness, not utter bear market type of price activity. If I go down to the daily chart, now this is where we get a little bit more interesting. This is where a lot of people are more familiar with what's going on here. You can clearly see the trend which is happening in the channel right? So lower highs, lower lows. And so what I'm looking at right now is the green line. The green line shows me if we break above the green line on big volume, it's got to be big volume here. Then we're heading back up to maybe 8,400, 8,500 or so, which is that descending trend line again. Or if what's happening from this little bounce here is it prints a lower high and rolls over, then at some point, what I'm expecting to see is that this descending channel will get broken to the downside. Now, this is not something that people talk about much, but one of the rules that I have is that ascending patterns like this will eventually break to the downside, but not before blowing out the upside first. Then she comes down like this. The opposite happens in a descending channel like this, right? So you start moving like this and you think that, well, descending patterns break to the upside. Yes, they do. But usually first, what we'll see is we'll see a move to parabolic. Now, I don't know if that means that we're going to have to undercut 6,500, whatever is necessary to bring in capitulation, because this is what occurs from here. This should be a very high volume event when it occurs down here. It's going to feel really scary when it does. All of the news that you see over in these news feeds is going to be 100% universally bearish. It's going to be stories of people just giving up and saying, that's it, I can't take it anymore. And this will be the point of maximum opportunity. When we get big, big, big volume like that, and we start to see candles that look very similar to this, which is a hammer candlestick, where we have big range and a lot of volume, but very little net price movement from there. That's a hammer candlestick. I'm still looking for that. Still looking for the capitulation. This is what I see in the short term as far as what's going on. Now, looking everywhere else here, we're seeing some coins make some modest movements. Like one that was pointed out a couple weeks ago was SEAL. So SEAL is actually doing great compared to the rest of the market. We do need a little bit of context here, because what I don't want you to do is to chase after this. And I'll show you a reason why here in just a minute. So we're seeing a nice trend here, higher highs and higher lows. And we actually had a lot of energy on the yellow line here. This is the CHOP index on the daily chart. However, you look at this on the weekly chart, you don't chase after moves like this. This is a poor choice to chase after this. What you want to do is wait until this chops around, beats everybody up for a little bit longer. This will build a nice tight little flag. You'll see this line here get back up to here, and then the next breakout should go, unless we're running into whack-a-mole mode, which has kind of been the MO for this market. Any altcoin that dares rally is just getting whack-a-mole by the bears lately. And we're kind of seeing that today, as well as the swing trades. Okay, that is the market report for today. If you guys have anything you want me to take a look at, let me know later when we do the Q&A section. But for now, I'm going to throw it back to Marvelous Mav.
Yeah. So what seems to be driving the market today is it's kind of twofold. One is that France is starting to experiment with a digital euro. They're trying to take the lead on that. I'm sure Macron wants to position France very well in the future of finance. And one way to do that is sort of taking the lead in terms of euro dominance and digital currency conversion to a more digitized form of fiat. Now, we've talked about in the past how that's sort of at odds with the open finance space that we're in, but at the same time, this is sort of the macro trend we're seeing on things. The U.S. is starting to potentially tokenize the dollar. The Chinese have obviously stated their claim to going after their digital version of currency. So I think that's a big piece of news, even if it's sort of muted to the backdrop of the larger context of what's going on today. That being, there's some fears about the trade war, and then there's some conciliatory talking going on, but ultimately we're still in the depths of global trade fears and potential recession fears. The second big piece of news, and I think this is what's really driving the market, or what spiked the market, it's dropping off right now, is that Kelly Loeffler, CEO of Bakkt, and she's married to the president or CEO of ICE, which runs the New York Stock Exchange. She was just picked to be Georgia's state senator, replacing another senator stepping down. I don't know, a couple months or so. So that's, obviously at face value, that's very good for crypto because obviously she's very pro crypto, having run and sort of given the charter to Backed and put out, very pro Bitcoin stances on a lot of things. Now, I want to caution people she's not going to come into the U.S. Senate, which is good. Like, don't get me wrong, it's great to see someone so pro crypto coming to the U.S. Senate. We need regulation, we need legislation to be in the conversation of the highest legislative body in the land. But at the same time, I think Kelly is sort of going to be, I would say, hampered somewhat in any sort of pro crypto agenda because, first off, she's of the Republican Party, which has been historically more pro crypto than the Democratic Party. So that is good. However, it's Trump's party right now, especially over the next year in terms of election year. So, and Trump made it very clear that he has no affinity for Bitcoin back in the summer when he tweeted about it. So I think Kelly is going to wait for marching orders regarding cryptocurrency, and she won't put out any pro or con statement regarding crypto, at least in her initial tenure of the U.S. Senate. So it's interesting news. It's these sorts of granular moves that help us to move the industry forward, to get the recognition that we need. But it takes time. It takes time. So um, to that end, we what I'd like to talk about today is what will be some of the trends going forward in 2020, and some of the things that I'm watching and I'm excited for, both in terms of investment and also technology perspective. So, okay, fingers crossed. See if PowerPoint wants to play nice today. We good? We good? All right. Looking good? Yeah, yeah.
It's marvelous.
All right. See if it. All right, cool. So first thing is that we just started a holiday sale, um, and to that end, if you are thinking about going into 2020, wanting to learn how to trade, wanting to learn more about crypto, we're running a special right now where, for example, if you buy the Fractal Energy course, one of our most popular trading courses, you get the Intro to TA course. Or if you buy, I'm sorry, if you buy the options course, you get the intro to TA. If you buy the Fractal Energy, you get the short term trading class for free. So we're just trying to give you guys the tools and the means to go into 2020, invest in yourself so that you can make some more active income. We don't charge an arm and a leg for this stuff. We really believe in the content and the education that we produce, and we're really proud of it. So we want to share it with you, and start the new year right. So to that end, what's going on? What's some of the things that I'm looking at? So first trend, and we'll go sequentially through these trends. I think the biggest trend, the biggest piece of 2020 that I'm paying attention to, and I think is going to be part of the narrative going forward, is data. Data is so I guess it's a piece of so many different things that as we see investing trends, as we see market trends, as we see technology trends, data seems to be at the central piece of that, the central thesis of what's changing and how it's changing. Blockchain obviously touches data, but data is it's fluctuates, and there's many types of data. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But the big piece here is that whoever controls this data controls the future, and I mean that very literally. One thing that I've talked about in our Omnia newsletter is this need for to answer the question around the evolution of technology, but also the evolution of how data changes and the ownership of it. So we're going to go through a little couple text heavy slides here, but I want to make sure that this is really important stuff. I think this is one of the core questions of our age. You know, when we talk about digital trust, it's you know, goes hand in hand with data and sort of this new concept of digital ownership. You know, we've seen some progress in things like the GDPR, but I think we are quickly getting to the point where the pace of technology and the pace of data ownership is vastly outpacing regulation and the legislation, and just the ability for governments to keep up with making sure that this data is not taken advantage of, or in the case of China, they are encouraging it. So another thing is, I want to sort of, as a hypothetical, think about the future of this data and what happens when we sort of cede control of our data. And some, I think a lot of people don't recognize the value of that data. For example, many people don't know that Facebook, the average user of Facebook, to them is worth about $200 in terms of the data that they can harvest from them and, you know, use to sell ads and things of that sort. And that's just one example of, you know, very transactional data. You know, you look at this thing, you get served this sort of ad, that sort of thing. But I think it's going to get a lot more complex, and with machine learning and AI, we're going to see a lot more uh, sort of complexity, or I don't know. It will be a lot more capable of anticipating who you are and what you want. And as I argue here, we might see scenarios where you'll have to be tied into this data faucet. You'll have to be providing your data in order to, you know, get insurance, to get healthcare, to you know, be participatory in a lot of the functions of you know, the technology as it changes. I think that's both promising but also scary future if we don't properly answer the question of how do you regulate the ownership of the data? And that's, I think, something that I think goes hand in hand with what blockchain advocates. And it's something that a decentralized system helps to address, not solve. But it's getting, you know, we're building up the momentum in the right way in that regard. So, anyways, not to get too pedantic, not to digress too much on data, but I think this is where we need to focus a lot of our attention on as a use case for blockchain, and as you know, a technology trend, possibly the biggest technology trend over the next year. The second thing is that you might have heard this phrase, "Data is the new oil." I argue that China is the new Saudi Arabia in that case, and the reason is because in the artificial intelligence era, where data is the petroleum, you know, China is not only harvesting lots of that data from their own citizens, but they're becoming more and more efficient at this sort of data. You know, the complexities that are involved with data analysis and forecasting of what people do. You know, we're quickly seeing to the you know, in places like Shenzhen, where you can order something just by, you know, you can walk up to a KFC and smile, and that's your order or something like that. Or we're seeing, you know, I was looking at a startup in Shenzhen where they analyze over 5,000 different data points in the course of 5 seconds when it relates to giving out a loan. Whereas, you know, a loan officer would look at maybe 10 credentials of who you are and how trustworthy you are. This company is sort of pioneering a model where they'll look at, you know, how quickly you filled out the form for this loan, what battery percentage you're at, how your eye contact is, you know, looking at this form and all that sort of stuff, to sort of measure, you know, your, just implicitly, like, how trustworthy you are as a person, based on what you're providing, but also how you're acting. And that's a very interesting but also scary sort of dystopian future if you look at something like that. Well, I've also heard I've talked to people about the stories of, you know, you jaywalk in Shenzhen, and within 20 seconds you get a fine on your phone because of the facial recognition technology. They also have screens at the crosswalks that will publicly shame people, you know, who've jaywalked, and will show their faces. And you know, this is sort of surface level of what China is really pioneering in this respect is sort of data ownership, but also data analysis, and starting to become really cognizant of how data is changing, how it's evolving, and they're pioneers in that regard. So I think this is the opportunity for the U.S. and the rest of the world to catch up. But this is where China is really taking the lead. Another thing is this sort of sense of surveillance capitalism, and I've kind of talked about this already in loose form, getting to this point. But essentially, it's the idea of capitalism derived from utilizing people's data, a la Facebook, obviously, but it gets deeper than that. It's getting better and better to understand who a customer is, who some sort of consumer is, and targeting them in such a way that they take certain actions, do certain things. It's not just buying; it's influencing, someone to be something based on if we can show them certain things. This is all talked about in this great book that I've got a picture of here, and I think this goes back to how I've talked about how data ownership is the topic, the trend to consider going into 2020, and surveillance capitalism is at the front of that. Moving along, another really interesting blend opportunity, yes, but also thing to note is fintech plus healthcare, and health tech is different than med tech. Med tech is more about X-ray machines and actually performing healthcare. Health tech is things like the Apple Watch, monitoring your heartbeat. And Apple just completed one of the biggest health surveys ever done of over 400,000 people. And what they did, and it was published in one of the most renowned journals on health science. So it was, it's a legitimate, survey or scientific study. What they did is, from those, they look for an irregular heart beat, and they're looking for this condition called atrial atrial. I can't even pronounce it. I'm not good at the health pronunciation of things, but essentially they're looking for the precursor to having a stroke. If you have, or if your heartbeat is irregular, then they can say with a certain degree of certainty, I think it was within an 80% confidence threshold or something like that, that you were at risk of developing a stroke within the next 6 or 12 months or something like that. And yes, this survey was sort of skewed. I mean, Apple Watch is going to be more targeted. More consumers of an Apple Watch are going to be of a younger demographic, which are just by default not at risk of having strokes or anything of that sort. So it's a very small sample size of the larger study that had this condition that were subject to the potential of having a stroke or whatever. The point here is, though, this is where we're starting to see wearables and technology interfacing with our personal lives, and the sort of health data that we generate just every day. As our bodies mature, as we look to better anticipate problems down the road, and better address problems that develop. This is where having a better understanding of who people are, or the sort of data that people are producing through their bodies. This is, I would say, one of the best and most interesting opportunities. And this is where Silicon Valley has said, yes, we're going after this. So you're seeing a lot of big fintech, big uh, tech companies going after the healthcare data, because they see the potential of blending all this data of healthcare data with consumer data, and having a better understanding of that. And to my knowledge, I think healthcare is something like an $8 trillion industry. So there's a lot of potential revenue there. There's a lot to develop and understand. So and this doesn't even get into tying it into things like insurance and better tracking of things. But I think there's a lot of nascent potential here that's really exciting. Moving along, just sorry, number five, getting out of order. Another thing I want to look at is the potential of enterprise blockchain. And I think this is where we're starting to see a lot of the shift of this blockchain industry is towards more legitimate exercises of blockchain technology, and we're seeing more and more business type applications for blockchain. And this is I think this is where blockchain will be in 2020 is around enterprise development, around synthesis of other emerging technology trends and fields. It's exciting stuff. It's definitely the future of this industry, so far as I'm concerned. Becoming more legitimate, becoming more institutionalized, yes, but becoming more broad in its ability to affect bigger and better applications. So I think that's going to be probably one of the best applications to look at for blockchain and one of the best investment vehicles to potentially analyze. Another thing is Bitcoin's narrative, and this is something we've talked about a lot. I think we are seeing two major macro forces, one endogenous, one exogenous, developing for Bitcoin over the next 5 or 6 months. The first, the internal one is obviously Bitcoin's having or happening or whatever. Um, that's obviously going to cause some volatility. I think what we're going to see in the months leading up to it is sort of a tightening of the spring almost, and more and more just short-term volatility that obviously people are trying to hold on and sell the right point for the halving event. I think that's just going to be an implicit strategy that a lot of people are going to use because we've been hearing about this event for the last 2 years. So, there's a lot of anticipation and everybody knows the date. And so there's no surprises there, but everybody's going to try to sell the top. And that's just going to happen. And I think there's going to be some interesting things about that. What I see as the more important factor or force going on is we will probably see over the next 5 or 6 months the S&P continue to print higher highs. I think there's just too many forces that are looking to continue to drive the market up, rational or no. And I think that's just where we are at right now. I think 2020 is going to be defined as maybe the bubble coming to the top or whatever. But at the same time, I think that's going to be a very good force for Bitcoin. Maybe not in the short term. What we've seen is Bitcoin is not so much a crisis hedge as a macro hedge. But that's a really interesting position for it to be in because then it starts to play some of the same game that gold does. But Bitcoin obviously has different utility value than what gold has. So I think that's what we'll see potentially. I think what's driving Bitcoin over the next year is it's going to be defined by this market volatility. It's going to be defined by accommodative monetary policy. It's going to be defined by expansionary fiscal policy, and it's going to be defined by below average expectations in terms of economic growth. We're seeing lots of red flags on the macro side that, yes, it's similar to 2007, but at the same time, it's so much different. And I think nobody quite knows where things are going to go, but Bitcoin stands to act against that. And I think that's well known at this point. But I think what we're seeing over and over again is that they're doubling down in terms of MMT, in terms of like, well, we'll just continue printing money and we'll just continue playing with rates to continue making sure that the market continues to be expansionary, even if it's irrationally so. And I think we're definitely in uncharted territories. This is definitely the fiat nightmare, scenario where there is no there's no ability to default on the loans. So we'll just continue to be a debtor nation, or debtor economy, a debtor global economy. Debt is the new money, and that's I think there's got to be some point where the cracks begin to become wide enough that people look for alternative asset classes, look for different risk assets, and that's really developed as Bitcoin's narrative over I would say the past year or two. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The other thing that I'm looking at in terms of the crypto space is capital formation. We've definitely seen ICOs, IEOs this year. IEOs, 90% of them are trading well below where they went to market, and it's clear that that was just a cash grab, and I think everyone knew that implicitly. But at the same time, there was a chance to, you know, get somewhat of a spark of that 2017 fire. But ultimately, yes, we're at a point now where ICOs, IEOs are dying a slow death. And I think there's been an expectation that what comes next is maybe venture capital or angel investing or STOs or STEOs. We don't know yet. I think this is still a developing area of this space, and I think investors in general are hesitant to look at this space and commit lots of capital to it, when first off the stock market it's already, you know, going higher, and secondly that, you know, there's been a lot of risk, there's been a lot of volatility in the space that hasn't been present in the larger markets. So unfortunately that's just been the case this year. I think there just hasn't been an emerging narrative that has sustained the market more than just as a contrarian hedge against the macro forces. Now, going forward, I think we will be in a good position for developmental phase, for developmental energy, you know, development, you know, venture capital type energy. Once we get back to that sort of building phase of things, but I think we've just had to tackle lots of hard issues in terms of blockchain scalability, in terms of usage and adoption potential and adaptation to lots of other emerging nascent technologies that are also in their own developmental phases of things. So I think what has been clear to me over the course of this year is that blockchain will become sort of one of these emerging technology fields. You know, go to Xi Jinping's comments on it. It's one of those frontiers that is going to define, you know, fintech is just going to blow up over the next couple of years. Blockchain will be right at the center of that. I would argue that it's at the center of the trade war right now. Development is, innovation is, and blockchain is one of those big open areas where there's lots of potential, there's lots of upside potential. Um, and yeah, it's going to get really hot. So, um, moving along to more macro type forces that uh, I would say emerging in the markets and the tech trends. And I know this PowerPoint's getting long in the teeth, so I want to make sure I'm keeping guys kind of energized here. But this is cool stuff. Hyper automation is essentially IoT AI, and it's definitely, I would say, the potential of what we're seeing emerge with AI's applications in a supply chain sense. And you know, this is really exciting stuff, even if it's kind of like, all right, well, we'll have automated factories and cool, great. But I think that's one of those really interesting and one of those areas where people get kind of scared of the potential of automation or whatever. Really, what we'll see is the synthesis of human labor and digitized or automated labor. I don't think we'll just see swaths of human labor just wiped out of existence. Rather, jobs will evolve, trends will change. This has always been the case with technology, and I think we're just going to see a more rapid, hyper version of that over the next 20 years. Another thing is AI for improved CX or customer experience. This is also referred to as multi-experience. This is, you know, I would say I'm really glad for this development. This is essentially replacing the call center worker. And yes, it is very version 1.0 right now, but it's getting better and better. You know, we're getting to the point now where, you know, think about Alexa or you know, your Google device, where it's pretty you know, cognitive in its abilities to understand you and what you want. And yes, you're asking it very transactional information. What's the weather today? Please set an alarm. That sort of stuff. But it's getting better and better at understanding context and sort of these human emotions that don't quite come along with language. And it's a really interesting development and area in terms of understanding speech and sort of the understanding of what you implicitly mean when you're trying to ask something or get something. And essentially, this is all coming back to improving the sort of customer experience so that you are able to better interact with businesses. Better businesses are better able to interact with you in terms of fulfilling your needs and what you want. So yeah, I listed Domino's Pizza here as an example, but uh, many more applications. Another thing is human augmentation, and this is something I'm personally like really excited about. And if you've ever played Deus Ex, meme, here, but this is one of those areas where it feels very science fiction y, but it's something that's gonna I think quickly evolve to the point where it's going to be staring us in the face. One area is in terms of mechanical, in terms of better augmenting hearing, vision, perception. We've had this sort of augmentation in the past, but we're starting to see better and better exoskeletons and prosthetics and brain augmentations. And I would say the second big piece of human augmentation is through genetic augmentation, and there is certainly some moral, ethical questions to talk about there. But certainly, what we're seeing in terms of development with like CRISPR and gene editing, I think is very promising and very interesting, and we will quickly get to the point. I think over the next decade or two, where we have to ask the question: is it ethical for us to eliminate cancer or some sort of disease? Is it ethical for us to potentially wipe out sort of these deficiencies that come with being human? And where do we take that? And yeah, very interesting questions. I love this sort of stuff because it gets at the heart of what technology gives us, but also challenges us to do is say, all right, well, where do we see ourselves going? What does technology enable, and how do we better address that? So
Just
anyway,
ask Matt Damon. What would Matt Damon do?
right, yeah, he's been in a couple movies
Yeah,
where
like
he's
Elysium, where he was
right,
augmented.
yeah. Another cool place is or trend is smart cities, or City 2.0. And this is another area where we're going to see things like smart buildings and smart health, and essentially better enabling citizens of the world to better enabling them to perform jobs or tasks, or basically improving the standard of living through having a more connected world. Quickly, we could see this going off the rails. So there has to be some limits in place, or ensuring that this enables democracy and doesn't limit it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here, and there's a lot of really cool applications when we start to look at our infrastructure, our transportation networks, and our utility networks, and say, how can we do better, and enabling that. So very cool stuff. Another thing is the empowered edge, which is essentially it's the evolution of IoT. It's enabling the edge is essentially all these billions of devices that are on the edge of the network, and better enabling them to you know be smarter, talk to each other. This is obviously one application for blockchain. This is one application for IoT or AIoT, where AI is sort of interfacing a lot of these devices together. You essentially have your smart home, your smart fridge, your smart toaster, but it goes bigger than that. It's better understanding these devices as a network, as a mesh network, and what kind of applications come about when you're able to better enhance the living structures or the transportation structures, or things like that. Very interesting applications here, and I think this is going to be one of those areas that blockchain is going to be a big piece of. Another thing is financial machine learning. So this is where you could say something like, "Hey Siri, please invest my retirement savings." I think we've seen over the past couple decades the rise of passive investing, and there's arguments right now that we're in sort of an index fund bubble, that passive investing is sort of maybe unintentionally malicious because it doesn't care the fees that it pays, and it's been shown that it's in a lot of times better than active trading or investing, or these fund managers. And that's really interesting, but at the same time, it's created this machine. That I think where it goes from here is based on machine learning, robo advisory, algorithmic trading, these sorts of things. I mean, we've had these sorts of things before, but now we're starting to see the next version, the next generation of this sort of stuff, and seeing what it can do once it's better able to understand data and better able to make analysis on that in that regard. Another thing we're going to see is tokenized fiat. This is something I briefly talked about at the beginning of this little presentation. And yeah, I think this is one of the big trends we're going to see this year. But again, I think this is where Bitcoin really shines in its ability to act as, I won't say a hedge in this regard, but an alternative, and that's important for it to be. So I want to make sure we're not getting too long in the tooth with this. So the last 6 of my top 20 trends will be in tonight's Omnia newsletter. But thanks for paying attention, guys, and hope that was a little bit enlightening and kind of fun to sort of think about the future and where we're going. But yeah, it's exciting stuff for sure.
Is there any truth to the rumor that you can change Alexa to have more of an attitude?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, that's I don't know. There's a lot of interesting little quirks it does have. Ooh, cool.
Cool. That was interesting.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll take your guys' questions for a little bit more here, and then we'll drop off to make sure go about your day. But yeah, thanks for sticking around, guys, and yeah, as always, appreciate hanging out with us. See what questions came up.
See here. Is curious if anybody has gotten on the Digitex beta yet. The Digitex beta. So I'll just quickly show this one over here. Make sure I'm on that. Yep, there we go. Okay, so keep in mind that when you get big moves like this, like Adam has always been showing like price action it's around in this area, right? So Adam Todd, when he does his what's the word I'm looking for? Like
Diatribe.
No. When he does his little explanations, he will typically the market's not doing anything, and so right, what you can do is you can just sit there and say, okay, I'm going to go long, and then I'm going to immediately, just clear this thing. He'll do something like that, and the problem that happens with that is what occurs if the price just drops like a stone like that. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, what do I do now? And it's you can't add any bracket orders. There's no stop that you can put in here. So in other words, if I wanted to put, so I'm going long in here, I've got a limit order on the right-hand side and the offer side. Okay, do you see that 100? Okay, but notice how the price is dropping now. The price is now dropped 20 points, or no, actually 10 points under where I entered it. And so I can't put a stop over here. If I put a stop over on this side, watch what happens. Clears out the position. I just cleared it out. Okay. So you can't create a true bracket order on here. You can just put limit orders on. And so just keep that in mind when you're doing that. If you get involved with price moving, it's just testnet coins. It's not a big deal. It's just testnet coins. But keep in mind that you have to know this is a good practice for you, that you have to know where your get out of town point is when you're using this, because you can't set up a bracket yet. I mean, that's my understanding, Rob, is that you can just put in limits, and limit is going to be effectively out of the money, right? So it's a buy limit is going to be below the current price, and those work great, where you can enter right at the current price. And then the sell limit is going to be above the current price if you're going long. Yeah, so a lot of people have never used a ladder before. I love ladders, but I've only used ladders like this with proper brackets where you can, as soon as you enter, you're putting in a bracket around there with your limit and your stop, and you can literally walk away from it. And it's one cancels others, so it tears it down. You can create those on any futures broker right now. So like if you're using a Bybit or Deribit or something like that, you can create a bracket, but you have to build it up one at a time. There's nothing quite so good as working with one of these trading ladders, though. So eventually, Adam's going to be adding orders and things like that. That's what the beta's for. So seems to be working well, though, for what it's meant to do.
Yeah, there's a question about how some of the uh, trends that I looked at, how do you translate that to crypto projects to invest in? Um, First off, I would still be kind of skeptical that even if you invest in a project that is, like for example, IoTeX or IoTeX, or I don't know how to pronounce it. That's obviously working in IoT. It seems somewhat promising, but at the same time, IoT is a very developing space. It's going to take years for it to really start to show its potential, its worth. So a project like that, yeah, it might be interesting to invest in. Is it going to do really well in 2020? Probably not. I don't know. There's some interesting things. Let's see. Another one I was looking at was Cosmos. Just from an SDK perspective, it's a lot of the people that I've talked to who are building dApps or some sort of decentralized project right now are either doing it on Ethereum or doing it through Cosmos. Really cool stuff there. I think that's another project where there's a lot of potential. And then we've obviously been very bullish on Decred, and we've done a lot of research and analysis on that one, and there's still a lot of potential there. It still needs to I would say hit a critical mass in terms of just usage or utilization, but we're playing the long game here. So yeah, there's definitely some good projects out there, even in a market that is as bearish as this one and as dominated by one asset, Bitcoin, as this one is. So yeah, good question. Opinions on Hex. Stay away, please. Oh my God, stay away. If you get the airdrop, cool. Sell it, get out. Not financial advice, obviously, but oh my gosh, everything that I've seen is bad. Um, I don't want to say it's BitConnect 2.0, and I don't want to disparage Richard Hart because he's I like his form of humor, but dude, like that's just what are you doing, man? I that's why like we as educators in this space have never really thrown in our hat with any project. We've never taken money from anyone because we wanted to stay away from being uh, so clearly biased towards a project. I mean, I understand Richard is behind Hex, or I don't really know the details of it, but at the same time, it like a clear. He's clearly using people to push that forward, and it's just I don't know. I don't like seeing that, especially when he's out there calling out guys like Craig Wright, and then he's pushing something like Hex, and it's like, what are you doing? You could be doing so much more, man. I don't know.
Oh, it's
Stay
so
away
funny.
from
It's
drama.
so funny because we sit here and disparage the traditional monetary system, and how inflexible it is and how it's not really meant for the little guy. But man, there are so many things that, just this level of monkey business is just not tolerated. And, I'm just amazed that the level of misbehavior that we see.
Uh, Rob, that's funny. Yeah, I've met Nicholas Data Dash a couple times. He's a good guy. But yeah, I would say the
There's the
sponsor.
Thor reference.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah.
took us 50 minutes to get the Thor reference. Awesome.
There's a Thor with a E at the end coin did really well a couple months ago, but that wasn't me. Oh man, that's good.
Let's see. Crypto Darthmark was looking for a little bit more leverage on Bitcoin. So I'm going to go over here. Okay, so this is BTC USD, and this is on Bitstamp. It doesn't matter that much. I like using Bitstamp for this because it's got the longest history. So what if, in fact, we do go below there? So we have to get out the weekly chart. Yeah. Okay, so the weekly chart, yeah, 6,500 is going to be the level for right now. 6,500 is, if we break 6,500 or thereabouts, it's maybe anywhere from like 6,300 up to 6,500. That level is where the high volume node lives. If we put this on, let's see if I can get this thing set. No, don't worry about it. Okay, so the high volume node's right around there. If we drop from there, then I guess you'd say somewhere around the 5,200 range, and I'm just eyeballing this. And then from there, the next level is about 4,000. So 6,500 really needs to hold. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself right now because I don't think it's ready to break 6,500 just yet. I think we have maybe one more reaction in here yet, just based on the way I'm seeing this. But again, anything could happen. It depends on, what catalyst comes into the market for that. So that's probably the chart to use on this, is to use the, and I'm trying to figure out where that's not it. There we go. Okay. There's my volume profile. Okay. So there's our volume node right there. And the next one you can see is about 4,000. So there's kind of a gap down in this area, very minor one at about 5,200. So those are the levels to watch for right now. But, until 6,500 breaks, we don't have to worry about those just yet. All right.
Oh man, I was gonna say we should get into Engine. They just announced a partnership with Microsoft, so it's up 25% today. That's pretty cool. It makes sense too because, to my knowledge, Microsoft is working with Samsung and they own Unity, the game development software. I've used it; it's great. Um, so yeah, Engine, and they're trying to be sort of like a game wallet sort of thing, and working with the gaming industry. So yeah, I would say that's probably going to continue to go up through today. So should be fun to watch.
And Enja versus BTC?
ENJ.
ENJ. Okay. Ooh, a little bit of volume there. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, there you go, Rob. Okay, last question here, and then we'll get out of here. Maybe we'll do some fun things before the end of the year, like top 20 movies for the year. There we go. Yeah, dumpage coming.
Probably.
Don't be like Data Dash and have a sponsored interview at the end of videos. It's funny because I did an interview with the Bybit founder the other day, and I got thrown up behind the woodshed and pummeled.
It's because you didn't snap. You got to snap.
I have to snap. I have to learn to snap. I was just, I had no idea that Bybit was like the shill kings out there. We just got some good feedback from our customers, the Omnia customers, that they liked it of all the other interfaces. So
yeah,
there we go. You live and learn. Okay, guys, it looks like we're done for today. So thanks for
get busy living, get busy dying.
Yeah. And so, Mav, where are you going next week?
I'm going to Hawaii.
Are you? Okay, so I'm going to be doing a special presentation next Wednesday on building a trading edge. So understanding how to use your mind, your mindset, and how we are programmed 180 degrees out of phase to be able to trade effectively right out of the factory. So we have to undo all of our social conditioning. We have to do all of our DNA. We have to completely reinvent ourselves to be effective traders and investors. Otherwise, we're going to get taken out behind the woodshed. So I'm going to talk to you guys about that next Wednesday if you're interested in doing that, versus surrendering all your autonomy to a bot, which I would recommend not doing. So yeah, mark your calendars for next week. And if you can't make it, just you can catch a replay. But I will be giving a full class on that, probably 45, 50 minutes or so.
All right.
All
Do
righty,
rapid
guys.
fire of there's the last couple questions here. Die Hard, best Christmas movie, obviously. Factum has survived for a while and it's gotten some investment, so it's okay. It's not my favorite, but it's got longevity. I talked to BlockFi at Consensus this year. Cool guys. Leverage trading, Doc has a futures course, so check that out. And APL, is that Apple? No, Apple's got 2 A's. I don't know. Cool. That's it for me.
And that's it for me. All right, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Thanks
Cheers.
for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.
Adios.